The sound of metal crunching against frozen ground was so loud it silenced the whole neighborhood. For a second, even the wind stopped moving. When the snow dust cleared, everyone saw it. Lydia Grant, the queen of our HOA, had driven her shiny silver SUV straight into the giant snowman my daughter and I built, and lost. Steam hissed from her mangled hood while our snowman stood there, untouched, scarf fluttering like it was mocking her. I didn't know whether to laugh or just stand there in disbelief. My daughter squeezed my hand and whispered, "Dad, is the snowman okay?" That line broke me, because in that ridiculous frozen moment I realized how poetic it was. The woman who'd spent years controlling every inch of this neighborhood just got defeated by a snowman. That morning had started like a dream, the first real snowfall of the season. Everything was blanketed in soft white, and the air had that clean, sharp smell only winter gives you. My daughter Hazel had been begging me all week, "When it snows, can we build the biggest snowman ever?" So when the flakes finally stuck, we went all in. Rolling, stacking, packing until it was taller than me. Neighbors slowed down to look. Kids shouted compliments from across the street. For once, this little HOA community actually felt alive, happy. But peace around here never lasts long. Not with Lydia around. Lydia Grant, 55, always in designer boots, burgundy bob haircut, clipboard practically glued to her arm. She ran the HOA like a queen ruling her tiny frozen kingdom. She fined people for leaving trash cans out 10 minutes too long, sent violation letters about unauthorized Christmas lights, and once made a couple repaint their front door because the shade of blue wasn't harmonious with community standards. So of course when she saw our snowman she treated it like a personal attack. "Mr. Carter," she barked, stomping through the snow, "we need to talk about this structure." Structure. She actually called it that. I laughed, thinking she was joking, but she wasn't. She scribbled on her clipboard, muttering about uniform yard aesthetics and potential sightline obstruction. I told her calmly, "It's just a snowman, Lydia. He'll melt long before you can cite him." That must have triggered something because she froze, tore off a citation slip, and handed it to me like she was serving a warrant. "You'll regret ignoring the standards," she said before storming off. Hazel looked up at me. Snow stuck to her gloves, and asked, "Did we do something bad?" I smiled and said no, but deep down I knew Lydia wasn't done. That night I was making hot chocolate when I heard an engine rev outside. Too close, too loud. I walked to the window and froze. Lydia's SUV headlights flared across the yard. She shifted into drive, slammed the gas, and plowed straight toward the snowman. The impact shook the ground. Metal buckled glass cracked, and that ridiculous snowman barely flinched, packed solid like a fortress of ice. I ran outside as neighbors' doors flew open. People in pajamas and coats stood gawking. Lydia sat in the driver's seat, airbag deflated across her chest, face white with shock. Hazel tugged my sleeve. "Dad, is he okay?" she asked again. And right then, the laughter started. One neighbor chuckled, then another, until half the block was laughing. The mighty HOA president defeated by Frosty the Snowman. Lydia climbed out, red-faced and furious. "You think this is funny?" she screamed, pointing at me. "You planted something inside that snowman?" "You sabotaged me." I didn't even answer, just stood there, arms crossed, letting her own absurdity echo through the cold air. "You'll pay for this," she yelled before stomping away, boots crunching like gunshots in the snow. By morning, the story was everywhere. The HOA president had crashed into a snowman and totaled her SUV, but Lydia wasn't embarrassed, she was enraged. That afternoon, I got an email from the HOA board, subject line, "Notice of Investigation." It accused me of creating a hazardous frozen structure and endangering community safety. It was clearly written by Lydia, every word soaked in fake professionalism. I laughed at first, even showed it to Hazel. But by evening, people started acting weird. Neighbors asked cautious questions. "Did you really put cement inside it? Was it ice?" That's when I realized Lydia was spreading rumors. Then came the emergency HOA meeting. The community hall was freezing, folding chairs lined up in neat little rows. Lydia sat at the front in a neck brace, no less, claiming she'd been performing a routine inspection when her car encountered a hidden obstruction. Her voice trembled just enough to sound dramatic. I stood up when it was my turn, told the truth that Hazel and I built the Snowman with nothing but snow and time. People nodded. They'd seen us. But Lydia wouldn't stop. She waved her arms, shouting, "This man has endangered our children. What if it had been a kid's sled instead of my car?" And that's when Frank, my neighbor, old firefighter, no-nonsense kind of guy, stood up. "Well, Lydia," he said, my Ring doorbell caught the whole thing. "Want to see it?" The entire room went silent. Lydia's eyes widened. She stammered about privacy violations and abruptly adjourned the meeting. People left whispering, some laughing outright. Frank patted me on the shoulder and said, "Don't worry, I've got your back." But Lydia wasn't done. The next week I got a pile of new citations, my trash cans visible from the road, my mailbox too tall, even Hazel's sled marks in the snow were unauthorized landscaping. It was harassment, plain and simple. At first it got to me. I'd wake up dreading what new violation might show up in my mailbox. I even thought about just moving away. Selling the house, getting Hazel somewhere peaceful. Maybe Lydia was right. Maybe I was the problem. Maybe I should have just let her win. That thought sat heavy for days. Until one night I looked out the window and saw something that changed everything. Snowmen. Dozens of them. All over the street. Little ones, tall ones, crooked ones, each with tiny cardboard signs that read, "Free Frosty." I actually laughed out loud. It was rebellion. The whole neighborhood was standing up, one snowman at a time. Lydia lost her mind. She stomped through the snow with her clipboard, snapping photos, yelling at parents, trying to take down evidence. But she couldn't stop it. Every yard she passed had another grinning snowman waiting. It wasn't fear anymore. It was freedom. A few days later I got a letter from Lydia's lawyer. She was suing me for damages, her car repairs, emotional distress, public humiliation. I remember sitting there at the kitchen table, letter trembling in my hands, feeling that familiar hopelessness wash over me again. It wasn't just petty now. It was war. Frank came over that night with 2 coffees. "You're not backing down, are you?" he asked. I didn't answer. He sighed, then smiled. "Good. Because I've got the video and you've got the truth. That's more than she's got." That same evening, another neighbor, Paul, quiet guy, works in accounting, knocked on my door. He looked nervous, like he'd been debating this for days. "I think you should see this," he said, handing me a stack of old HOA newsletters and budget sheets. I used to be on the finance committee before Lydia forced me off. I made copies. The numbers didn't add up. Thousands of dollars listed for landscaping projects that never happened. "She's been stealing," Paul said. "For years." I stared at the papers, realizing this was bigger than a snowman. Lydia's empire was built on lies, and maybe, just maybe, it was finally cracking. We planned everything. At the next HOA meeting, we'd show the video, the records, everything. Frank joked it felt like a heist movie. But for me, it was about redemption, not just for me, but for everyone Lydia had bullied into silence. The night of the meeting, the community center was packed. People stood shoulder to shoulder, whispering. Lydia arrived, last neck brace on again for drama. She didn't even let anyone sit before launching into her speech. "This man," she shouted, pointing at me, "has led a campaign of chaos. He's endangered our neighborhood and our children." I stayed quiet, hands folded, letting her talk herself into a frenzy. Then Frank stood up, calm as ever. "Actually," he said, "we've got something to show you." He hit play on his laptop. The room filled with the sound of an engine revving. Headlights flashed, then Lydia's SUV shot forward straight into the snowman. Gasps rippled through the crowd. You could see it clearly. She paused, aimed, and hit the gas. Deliberate. Lydia jumped up, screaming, "That's fake! It's edited," but no one believed her. Then Paul stepped forward, holding the finance records. He spoke quietly but firmly, explaining how Lydia had funneled HOA money into her personal expenses, restaurants, spa trips, vacations. Every page he flipped made the crowd angrier. One neighbor shouted, "You stole from us!" Another yelled, "Resign already!" Lydia's face went pale. She tried to shout them down, but her voice cracked. The power she'd built for years was slipping through her fingers. Finally, someone motioned for a vote of no confidence. Hands went up, dozens of them. Lydia froze, eyes darting around the room, realizing she was alone. The vote passed unanimously. A few weeks later, the court hearing for her lawsuit came up. She strutted in with her lawyer, confident as ever. They painted me as reckless, malicious, said I'd built a fortified ice hazard. The judge listened patiently, then turned to me. I stood, told my story, just a father building a snowman with his daughter. A simple moment turned into madness by someone who couldn't stand not being in control. Then Frank played the video again. The judge leaned back, expression unreadable. When it ended, he said calmly, "Case dismissed. Mrs. Grant, you'll be paying the defendant's legal fees and expect an investigation for insurance fraud." Lydia went silent. Her lawyer whispered something, but it didn't matter. The gavel hit the desk. It was over. When I walked out of that courthouse, the air felt lighter. Neighbors who'd shown up clapped me on the back. Hazel skipped beside me, humming her red hat, bobbing with every step. For the first time in years, the neighborhood felt alive again. Word spread fast. Lydia was removed from the HOA board. Frank was elected president, Paul the new treasurer. A week later, a for sale sign went up in Lydia's yard. I never saw her again. And you know what? The next snowfall, Hazel ran outside yelling, "Let's build another one." Before I could answer, half the neighborhood joined in. Parents, kids, everyone rolling snow, laughing, shouting across yards. By sunset, a dozen snowmen stood proudly on our street, scarves fluttering in the cold wind. Frank came by, grinning. "Funny, isn't it?" he said. "Took a snowman to bring this place back to life." I just smiled, watching Hazel place the final carrot nose on ours, standing tall under the soft orange sky. Sometimes I think about how all of it started: one snowman, one clipboard, and one woman who couldn't stand to see joy she couldn't control. And maybe that's the lesson. You can write a rule book for everything in life, but you can't outlaw laughter.